I realized I'd just made the stupidest mistake of my life the exact moment the CEO's office door locked behind me. While I was still sitting in his chair, I froze. Hands hovering over the projected keyboard, blue holographic light flickering across my face like I'd been caught mid-crime. Which, technically I had. But in my defense, if you fire a cybersecurity specialist for insubordination, you shouldn't expect him to go quietly. The panoramic windows of Lunari's system's top floor stretched from edge to edge. The whole city sprawled below, neon lights pulsing like arteries. The room looked like something out of a luxury tech cathedral. Sleek, steel, glass, cold white lighting, and not a single speck of dust. Everything was too clean. Too precise. Too him. The holographic interface under my fingers displayed the final line of code I'd just executed. My code. The one that bypassed every firewall the company was so proud of. The one that proved my innocence. The one that, apparently, triggered an emergency lockdown. Perfect. I swallowed, fighting down the frustrating cocktail of panic and adrenaline. I should not be thrilled right now, but hacking Lunari's supposedly unbreachable system felt disturbingly good. Almost cathartic. Especially after they'd escorted me out like some kind of unstable intern. I wasn't unstable. I was mad. I told you I wasn't responsible for that breach, I muttered under my breath, glaring at the glowing line of code. But new, HR said I lacked professionalism. I mean, seriously, me? Professionalism? The scanner above the door beeped once, then twice, then, click, footsteps. I turned my head just enough to see him in my peripheral vision. Keir Voss, CEO, Alpha. Living, breathing monument to minimalism and efficiency. And apparently the owner of the office chair I was using as a crime throne. He stood framed by the door like a cold executioner. Tall, immaculate, tailored suit sharp enough to cut glass. Dark hair slicked back with irritating precision. Eyes like two chips of winter trapped in a man's skull. He didn't look surprised. Or angry. Or anything. That terrified me more than if he'd started yelling. His voice slid across the room. Low and crisp. Mr. Hale. Ugh. My government last name. Bad sign. I forced a grin. Hey boss, funny seeing you here. Thought you'd be at some board meeting discussing whose soul to optimize next. His eyes dipped to the interface still glowing under my hands. You're accessing classified executive systems. Temporarily. I lifted a finger. Technically. And beautifully. Unauthorized. A pause. You triggered a level 4 breach protocol. Okay. But in my defense. No defense you provide, he said flatly, will begin to justify this level of stupidity. Ouch. Direct hit. The man wielded logic like a weapon. I pushed myself out of his chair, and tried not to look like a cornered cat. Look Keir, Mr. Voss, sir, whatever. I didn't do the breach I was fired for. I came back to prove it. Because someone had to, clearly. Keir stared at me for 3 long, impossibly silent seconds. It felt like the room held its breath. Your termination, he said, was not an error. Yeah? Well, your security system thought otherwise. I jabbed a thumb at the floating interface. I just broke into it using half a coffee and 3 hours of resentment. Look at the logs. I have. He stepped closer, too close. Every instinct in my body jolted. Your little stunt confirms only one thing, you're reckless. Reckless? I scoffed. Please. I'm a professional. You are an Omega, he corrected, tone clinical, demonstrating catastrophic impulse control. Wow. Rude. Accurate, but rude. The pressure in my chest twisted. Instinctive, heated, stupid. So I did what any self-respecting Omega with a hereditary suppression gene would do. I tried to shut his alpha instincts off. Just a little. Enough to get him to back up. To give me space. To prove I wasn't someone he could talk down to. I inhaled, trying to focus the subtle internal switch. A familiar thrum spread from the base of my spine upward, tingling behind my ribcage, into my fingertips. A soft spark. A pulse. The kind of genetic whisper that had dropped full-grown alphas to silence before. And Keir did not react at all. He didn't blink, didn't tense, didn't waver. He just watched me, expression unreadable, like he was observing a bug trying to lift a car. My stomach flipped. Are you broken? I blurted before my brain could intervene. No. His tone cut clean and smooth. Whatever you attempted, didn't like it? I didn't feel it. Well, fantastic. My secret family gift works on everyone, except the most inconvenient man in the city. He stepped forward again. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to keep eye contact. My pulse spiked. I should call the police. You should, I said quickly. But if you do, you'll lose the one person who knows how the real breach happened. He didn't move. Didn't blink. You're bluffing, he said. I'm brilliant, I corrected. Another silence. He seemed to be running calculations behind his eyes. Finally, you have two options. The air tightened. I swallowed. Option 1, immediate arrest. Cybercrime, corporate infiltration. You'd get several years. I winced. Hard pass. Option 2. His voice dropped lower. More dangerous. You return to Lunaries under my direct supervision. You work, you correct the breach. You answer to me alone. I stared at him. That's not actually an option, I said. That's just you offering prison with Wi-Fi. You may choose, he repeated, completely unfazed. My mind spun. Every instinct screamed run. Every rational thought said I was already too deep. And somewhere under all that, a small defiant spark whispered, beat him. Beat him with logic. Beat him with brilliance. I exhaled slowly, meeting his eyes dead on. Fine, I said. I'll work for you. His gaze sharpened. Curiosity, maybe approval, flickering for just a fraction of a second. But, I added, straightening, I'm not staying because you scared me. I'm staying because you're wrong. And I'm going to prove it. I'll fix your system so elegantly you'll cry. I do not cry, he said. Oh, just wait. A beat of tense quiet. Then he nodded once. Report to me at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Bright and early, I muttered. Can't wait. I grabbed my bag, pushed past him, and as I reached the door, I shot a look over my shoulder. I am going to break this alpha with sheer logic if it's the last thing I do. Walking back into Lunari's systems the next morning felt like stepping onto a stage where everyone already knew the script, except me. The glass-paneled lobby reflected 1,000 angles of my face, all of them wearing the same expression. Don't panic, you're fine, absolutely fine, totally not here under duress. The open workspace on the 12th floor buzzed with the usual hum of keyboards and quiet conversation. Until I stepped out of the elevator with Keir beside me. Then everything shifted. Alphas stiffened instinctively, posture straightening like they'd just smelled a fire. Omegas dipped their heads, eyes darting from me to him and back again, confusion blooming. Betas paused mid-task, observing like curious scientists witnessing a new organism. The whispers spread like digital wildfire. Didn't he get fired? Why is he with the CEO? Is this a walk of shame situation, or... No, he's an Omega. They don't usually walk with alphas like that. I kept my chin up and my expression in the general region of smug. If I looked confident enough, maybe they wouldn't notice that my palms were sweating. Keir walked with his usual quiet precision, head high, suit immaculate, gaze straight ahead. Not acknowledging anyone. Not acknowledging me either, which was weirdly reassuring. But the moment we passed through the biometric gate, a hologram flickered to life above us. Observation Protocol A, active. Supervisor, CEO Keir Voss. Subject, Jaren Hale. A ripple of stunned silence washed across the room. Great. Nothing like having your new job status announced like a scandalous dating rumor. I leaned toward Keir and hissed, was the giant glowing banner really necessary? Yes, he said without looking at me. Transparency improves efficiency. Yeah? Because right now it's improving my urge to jump out a window. You are on the 12th floor, he replied dryly. Survival chances are low. I blinked at him. That was a joke? No. Right. Of course not. He guided me, if one could call cold, silent marching guiding, to a small workstation tucked between two glass partitions. It was modern, compact, and unfortunately visible from 6 different angles. Your desk, Keir said. All your previous access has been reinstated. All activity you perform will be mirrored to my interface. That's not creepy at all. It is protocol. The moment he finished speaking, someone clicked across the floor toward us, too quickly, too eagerly. Layla. An HR beta with razor-cut bangs, killer heels, and the personality of a corporate filing cabinet possessed by envy. Mr. Voss, she chirped, completely ignoring me. I didn't realize you were personally escorting the new employee. Her eyes flicked to me with that same sugary disdain she'd used the day she processed my termination papers. Oh, she added, smile sharpening. It's you. Back so soon? I assumed Omegas usually take longer to adjust to unemployment. The jab was so transparent it practically came with a barcode. I gave her a slow, lazy grin. Layla, right? Funny, you talk a lot about Omegas, but the only thing I remember from HR training is that betas shouldn't project their insecurities onto others in the workplace. Did they not cover that in your certification? The nearby analysts froze. One choked on his drink. Layla's smile cracked, and for a split second she looked like she'd like to push me out that 12th floor window herself. Keir finally turned his head and gave her a single, cool glance. Miss Rivers. Emotional instability is noted in your personnel log. Her jaw dropped. What? Sir. Return to your station, he said. She fled. I tried not to laugh. Failed. You know, I said, wiping a tear from the corner of my eye, if you ever get tired of running a tech empire, you'd make an incredible HR enforcer. That is not a real position. It should be. He didn't dignify that with a response. Instead, he tapped his wrist console, projecting a floating interface between us. Layers of code, behavioral charts, and anomaly markers spiraled across it. This is Echo 9, he said. Our predictive analysis platform. It began generating unstable outputs shortly after your termination. I frowned. Coincidence or sabotage? That is what you will determine. I scanned the logs quickly. Irregularities pulsed like tiny fractures, each one time-stamped exactly 12 hours after I'd been escorted out of the building. My stomach tightened. Someone piggybacked on my old security clearance, I muttered. But the pattern is weird. It's like the system's losing track of itself. That is an unacceptable description, Keir said. It's accurate. Echo 9 isn't supposed to behave like it has a crush. It does not have romantic preferences. It should consider developing some. Might explain these mood swings. Keir inhaled very slowly, clearly recalibrating whatever patience meter he used to cope with me. You will begin immediately. The system is volatile. Relax, I said, cracking my knuckles and sliding into my seat. I'll find the error faster than you can blink. That is an exaggeration. Oh. I shot him a grin. Try me. For a heartbeat, something flickered in his eyes. Curiosity, irritation, maybe the tiniest spark of interest. Then he turned away, leaving me with the humming glow of Echo 9 and the burning promise I'd already made to myself. I'm going to fix this. And I'm going to prove him wrong. One line of code at a time. The Echo 9 Analysis Center felt nothing like the open office floor. It was colder, quieter, almost reverent. Rows of server pillars rose like obsidian monoliths around us, each humming with a low, vibrating pulse. Holographic panels floated in mid-air, rotating streams of data light blue against the dimness. The air smelled faintly of metal and ionized coolant. If Lunaris Systems was a cathedral of tech, this room was its altar. Keir stood in front of one of the rotating projections, hands clasped behind. His back, posture so precise it made me straighten unconsciously. Echo 9's behavioral core is housed here, he said, tone clipped and almost mechanical. Its algorithms adjust in real time. You will focus on layer delta, where the instability first appeared. He gestured, and a cluster of holographic windows snapped into alignment. I whistled softly. Very dramatic. Very villain of the week. He didn't react. Of course. This environment is optimized for concentration, he continued. Refrain from unnecessary commentary. I don't know, I said, stepping up beside him. My commentary is often the highlight of my coworker's day. Unlikely. Rude but fair. He magnified a specific section of the code. Lines shifting fluidly like water. This is the anomaly. I glanced at it once. Twice. And... Oh. I frowned. Oh, that's ugly. His brow twitched. Explain. It's tearing. Code does not. Yes, it does. I pointed at a flickering seam between two data blocks. Microfractures. The integrity of the behavioral chain is splitting. Like someone stitched it wrong, and now the fabric's pulling apart. He blinked. Keir Voss blinked. What? He said slowly. Did you just see? I zoomed in on the section, isolating one of the flickers. These, here. You see how the data isn't just missing, it's slipping. Like the system tried to reassign values but couldn't reconcile them. That's why you're getting all those unpredictable outputs. Keir leaned closer to the projection. I could practically hear him calculating. That is, not a standard interpretation, a creative one, I said, tapping my temple. You hire a hacker, you get metaphors. I did not hire you. Temporary technical conscription then. Still counts. He shot me a razor-edged look, but I was too absorbed in the code to care. Then he stepped closer. Too close. Our shoulders brushed as we both reached for the same holographic cluster. The temperature in my body spiked instantly. Heat blooming low in my abdomen, in my chest, spreading like someone had switched on a furnace under my ribs. Oh no. No, no, no. Not this again. I inhaled sharply through my nose, trying to wrestle my instincts back into submission. Relax. He's just tall. And warm. And annoyingly good-smelling in a CEO who buys soap made of charcoal and ego kind of way. Move to the left, he said quietly. I did. But not far enough. Because he mirrored the movement at the same time and the side of his arm briefly brushed mine again. Heat flared. My thoughts scrambled. Dear body, calm down. He's an alpha, not a limited edition gaming console. Stop reacting. Trying to keep my expression neutral, I pushed my suppression gene, just lightly. Just enough to nudge him back emotionally, maybe make him step away. Nothing. Not a flicker. Not a shift. His gaze remained focused, icy, annoyingly steady. Well, that was humiliating. You are tense, he observed. Could be your personality. His eyes narrowed faintly. Your attempts at instinct suppression are ineffective. Wow, I muttered. Thanks for the performance review. He tilted his head, studying me with that unnervingly analytical stare. Sharp, assessing. Like he was mapping every reaction and filing it away. This instability pattern, he finally said, returning his focus to the code, should not be possible. Echo 9 has adaptive safeguards. Yeah, I murmured, zooming back out. Except something's slipping past them. Something smart. Or someone. He didn't deny it. We worked in silence for a few minutes, the soft hum of servers filling the space. Despite the tension, and the heat still simmering annoyingly in my skin, it felt almost natural, like two halves of a mismatched but oddly functional machine. He pointed to a data loop. Your assessment? Same issue. It's fraying from inside out. Whoever did this didn't overwrite Echo 9. They confused her, like giving her two different instructions at the same time. You personify the system. She acts like she has moods. She does not. She absolutely does. His sigh was the quiet, suppressed kind. The kind that meant I had gotten under his skin. Good. A petty part of me thought. At least I'm not the only one glitching here. Finally he stepped back, hands folding behind his back again. Your analytical approach is unorthodox. That's code for you're impressed, right? No. A pause. Followed by, you are chaos attempting to masquerade as logic. I blinked. That, he added, is interesting. A surprising warmth flickered in my chest. Great. Now, I was interesting. As if my life wasn't complicated enough already. I turned back to the hologram, jaw set. If Echo 9 wanted to unravel, fine. But I'd unravel her faster than she'd unravel me. And maybe, just maybe, I'd figure out why this infuriating alpha could walk through my suppression field like it was mist. Testing my suppression gene on Keir had been a humiliating disaster, so naturally, the logical next step was to test it on everyone else. For science. And also, for my ego. My first victim, Volunteer, was a security alpha stationed at the biometric checkpoint. Big guy, square shoulders. The type who could bench press a vending machine. I walked up, offered an innocent smile, and let a subtle wave of suppressive energy roll off me. The effect hit instantly. The alpha's shoulders sagged. His posture softened. His pupils dilated a fraction, as if someone had turned down the internal volume of instinct. Perfect. Sir? He murmured, blinking slowly. Do you need assistance? Nope, I said brightly. Just passing through. He nodded dreamily. Test number 1, flawless. Second test. The head of data integrity, an alpha known for criticizing interns into tears. I leaned over her desk under the pretense of asking about log retrieval permissions, and let the suppression switch flip. She froze mid-sentence, then exhaled slowly, tension draining from her spine. Oh, she said, voice unusually mellow. I was speaking too fast. Apologies. I grinned. You're doing great. Test number 2. Beautiful. Test number 3. Well, that one was the problem. I found Keir in his office, standing before a wall-sized data screen, hands moving with crisp precision as he sifted through Echo 9's fragmented patterns. I watched him for a moment, calculating, cold, elegant in that frustratingly intimidating way, and then inhaled softly. Suppression. Focused. Controlled. Directed at him. It hit his aura and evaporated. Like throwing water on hot metal. No flinch. No softening. Nothing. He glanced up from the display, eyes cool and annoyingly sharp. Are you finished? He asked. I cleared my throat. With what? With whatever you just attempted. I didn't attempt anything, I lied. You demonstrated physiological tension followed by a controlled exhale, he said, tone clinical. A habitual pattern for instinct modulation. Okay, rude. And accurate. Again, I folded my arms. Maybe you're just reading too much into my breathing. I do not misread breathing, he said simply. Especially yours. My face heated. Fantastic. I retreated into the hallway to recalibrate my dignity, and ran into Kessie. Kessie wasn't like most analysts here. She had soft curls tied in a loose ponytail, glasses that slid down her nose, and the ability to smile without any hidden agenda. Which, in this company, made her practically mythological. Oh. Jaren, she said, adjusting her tablet. I was hoping to see you. Keir assigned you to Echo 9's behavioral drift logs, right? Seems so, I sighed. Apparently I'm the only one chaotic enough to decode her moods. Kessie giggled. Honestly, I'm glad you're here. The system's been acting weird for weeks. Outputs reversing, predictions collapsing, alerts firing for no reason. Any theories? Just one, she said, lowering her voice. It started the day after you were fired. My stomach tightened. Coincidence? I don't think so. Echo 9 adapts to individuals she profiles regularly. Losing someone suddenly might have destabilized her. Huh. I'd never considered myself important enough to rattle a billion-dollar AI by existing wrong. Thanks, I said, meaning it. Really? She smiled. Anytime. Don't let Keir scare you too much. Oh, trust me, I muttered. He's the one who should be scared. She blinked. Of you? Yes. No. Maybe. I escaped before she could ask follow-up questions and wandered straight back into Keir's office like someone who'd lost all sense of self-preservation. He was inputting something into the system when I approached the side interface quietly, pulling up his behavioral profile. It should have shown a detailed breakdown, alpha instinct patterns, response curves, emotional baselines. Instead, I got nothing. Well, not nothing. A half-finished graph. A broken spectrum. A blank emotional column entirely. It was like someone had ripped out half the data. What the hell? I whispered. Keir's voice sliced the air. You do not have authorization to access my profile. I jumped. Do you materialize behind people on purpose? I walk, he said. Silently. That's worse. He stepped closer. Way too close. Explain why you are accessing restricted information. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Then said the stupidest possible thing. Because you don't make sense. His eyes narrowed dangerously. Clarify. Your profile is incomplete, I said. Wrong. Illogical. Like it's missing entire sections of instinct data. No alpha should look like this. He studied me for a long, sharp moment. Like he could hear thoughts forming in my skull. Then, you are either very brave, he murmured, or very foolish. I have not decided which. I smirked before my brain could intervene. Oh, I've decided, I said. I just enjoy getting under your skin. His jaw tightened, fractionally. And for the first time, I saw it. He did feel something. He just hated showing it. Interesting. The technical balcony on the 17th floor wasn't meant for breaks. It was meant for emergency server venting, and the occasional engineer having an existential crisis, which made it the perfect spot for me. I leaned on the railing, staring down at the city as it shimmered beneath us. Neon veins cut through the darkness, pulsing with traffic and life. Wind tugged at my hair, cool against the warmth of the coffee cup in my hands. Kessie stood beside me, sipping her drink with both palms cupped around it like she was afraid the wind would steal it. "It's nice up here," she said, squinting at the skyline. "Scary, but nice. Same could be said about this job." She snorted softly. "You're not wrong." For a moment we just stood there, letting the noise of the servers behind us and the hum of the city below fill the space. It felt grounding. Something I hadn't felt since before the whole "you are fired, please leave immediately" fiasco. Then Kessie nudged me gently with her elbow. "You've been weirdly quiet today, like you're stuck in your head. Bold of you to assume I'm ever not stuck in my head." She smiled, but her eyes were too perceptive. "So? What's going on?" I hesitated. Not because I didn't trust her. I did. In that instinctual way you trust someone who has never once looked at you like you were a threat, a tool, or a headline waiting to happen. No. I hesitated because I didn't talk about my family. Not really. Not seriously. But the wind carried a hint of home, the metallic scent of rain on wires, the far-off rumble of trains. And maybe that loosened something in my chest. "My family," I began slowly, "comes from a complicated lineage." "Oh?" She tilted her head. "Complicated how?" "Spy complicated." She blinked. "Like literal spies?" "Literal spies," I confirmed. "A whole covert clan of them. They were called the Hail Line. Or, those terrifying shadow wolves who get into everything." Kessie's eyes widened. "During the big corporate wars," I continued, swirling the coffee. "In my cup, they were the best infiltration unit on the continent. No one could catch them, no one could predict them. And then," I exhaled, "they vanished." "You mean?" "Wiped out, one operation gone wrong. My parents were some of the last survivors, and they ran, changed their names, tried to build a quiet life. So they raised you away from all that?" I nodded. "Mom wanted me to be normal. Dad too. No spy games, no missions, no training. They thought the gene wouldn't pass on, that it would finally end with them. But it didn't." "Nope." I tapped my temple. "Turns out the universe has a sense of humor." She listened quietly, gently. "The way people do when they know you're saying something you don't often share. So you got the abilities," she said softly. "Yeah. Analysis so fast it feels like my brain is running on overclock. Pattern recognition that never turns off. And the suppression thing," I lifted a hand. "The gene that was supposed to die with my parents." Kessie's gaze softened. "And you've been using it to, what, fit in?" "To survive," I corrected. Then, quieter. "To keep alphas from walking all over me. To not be controlled." The wind carried that confession away before I could regret it. And beneath it all, a familiar heaviness pulled at my ribs. A mix of nostalgia and something sharper. Like missing a home that had burned down long before you were old enough to remember it. "My parents tried so hard," I murmured. "To protect me. To give me a life where I didn't have to be anything more than a slightly problematic omega with too many opinions." Kessie reached out, brushing her knuckles gently against my arm. "You're not problematic," she said. "You're just... you." I laughed under my breath. "Thanks. Real motivational speech energy." She smiled, then hesitated. "Jaren, can I ask something?" "Sure. Are you afraid of your gene?" The wind stilled for a breath. I looked down at my coffee. At the city. At my reflection trembling faintly on the surface. "No," I said slowly. "I'm not afraid of the gene." I turned to meet her eyes. "I'm afraid of the one person it doesn't work on." Her breath hitched. "Keir?" "Yeah," I said, the truth landing heavy and quiet between us. "Him." Returning to the Echo 9 Analysis Center felt different this time. Maybe it was the conversation with Kessie still lingering in my chest. Maybe it was the cold hum of the servers that suddenly felt less like machines and more like a pulse. Or maybe it was the fact that every time I stepped into this room with Keir, something in me braced for impact. We stood before the floating streams of code again. Blue light casting shifting shadows across the floor. Echo 9's data cascaded in endless glittering patterns. Too fast for a normal mind, intoxicatingly readable to mine. "Begin from the drift logs," Keir said, voice steady and low. "We need to trace the origin of the disruption. On it." At first it was normal. Log entries. Behavioral charts. Predictive matrices. All standard, all clean. Until they weren't. A section of code pulsed red. Then another, then another. "Uh-oh," I muttered. Keir turned slightly. "Explain." It's running prediction models. I zoomed in. On me. He blinked once. You. Yep. My heartbeat kicked up. It's trying to analyze my choices, reactions, patterns, everything. That shouldn't be possible. Yet here it is. I pointed at the shifting graphs. Look, this line here means the system is trying to simulate my next moves. She's guessing me. Keir moved closer, eyes narrowing. Continue. The next set of lines flickered, and then collapsed. A red error flashed. Prediction failed. Recalibrating. Another attempt. Another failure. The error blinked again. And again. And again. I felt my stomach twist. Something about seeing a machine, one built to understand everyone, struggling specifically with me felt personal. I don't like this, I muttered. The next prediction attempt flashed. Prediction impossible. That's when the air shifted. That's when it hit me. A faint spike of fear. I wasn't even sure where it came from. Gut, gene, memory, instinct. Just a cold jolt right under my ribs. Sharp enough that I drew a sudden breath. Keir's head snapped toward me instantly. What did you feel just now? His voice wasn't sharp. It was quiet. Too quiet. I swallowed. It's nothing. That was not nothing. Describe it. Annoyingly perceptive man. I exhaled slowly. Fine. I felt something, like a drop in my stomach. Fear, maybe. He stepped closer. Fear of what? I shook my head. I don't know. It was just unexpected. The error flashed again, bolder this time. Prediction failure. Prediction failure. Prediction failure. Keir's gaze sharpened. And now? Now? I gave a brittle laugh. Now I feel annoyed. Annoyed, he repeated, as if cataloging the word. Yes. Because I hate when systems break around me. And because I hate being unpredictable. And because I stopped myself before I could admit anything truly stupid. Keir didn't move. Didn't blink. But something subtle changed in the air. A softening. A quiet recalibration of him. He reached out, hesitation so slight I almost missed it, and rested a hand lightly on my forearm. The contact was barely there. His fingertips warm. His presence steady. But the effect was immediate. My breathing evened. The cold spike in my ribs dissolved. My pulse returned to normal. It was the gentlest gesture he'd ever made, and somehow more effective than anything he'd said or done before. If the system is reacting to you, he said quietly, then it is not just malfunctioning. It is responding. Responding how? We will find out. But not if you are distressed. I'm not. I stopped. Okay, maybe a little. He didn't remove his hand. And I didn't step away. For one strange moment, the servers hummed like white noise, the holograms spun like constellations, and Keir felt almost human, almost soft. He finally let go, but slowly, deliberately. Jaren? Yeah? His eyes, cold, analytical, impossible, met mine with unwavering focus. You are the only person I cannot read. My breath caught. He continued, tone low. And I do not like being unable to read someone. A shiver ran down my spine. Part fear, part fascination. Part something that made no logical sense whatsoever. I stepped back before I did something stupid. Guess you'll have to deal with it, I said quietly. His jaw tightened. I intend to. The server room on sub-level 3 didn't look like anywhere a sane person would willingly enter at night. Dim lights flickered overhead in uneven pulses, throwing long shadows across the rows of humming black towers. The air was cool, almost chilly, with a faint metallic scent that clung to the back of my throat. The sound was a low, constant vibration, like a heartbeat buried under steel. Perfect place for a terrible decision. I stood between two towering server racks, staring at my hands like they held the key to the universe. Okay, I whispered to myself. Either now or never. The suppressor gene thrummed faintly beneath my skin, a soft tension waiting to be pulled like a trigger. After what happened in Echo 9, after seeing Keir stay completely unaffected. Not once, not twice, but every single time, I needed answers. Even if those answers scared me. Especially if they scared me. I waited until I heard his footsteps. Even those sounded precise. Keir stepped into the aisle, illuminated by the flickering light. His silhouette looked carved out of the darkness. Sharp suit, sharp gaze, sharp everything. The man had no business looking that composed at midnight. "You requested my presence," he said. "Requested. Right." I'd sent him a message that simply read, "I need you in the server room. It's urgent, not misleading at all." "Yeah," I said, exhaling. "There's something we need to test, or something I need to test." His head tilted slightly. "Define. I need you to stand still. I do not take orders." "Well, tonight you do." His eyes narrowed, but he didn't move. He just watched me with that unsettling, calculating stillness. I took one step toward him, then another. The suppressor gene responded immediately. Heat blooming up my spine, pressure building behind my ribs, a tightening sensation like a coil winding inside me. I reached for it. Focused, pulled, slowly, carefully, deliberately. A wave rolled off me, not strong but precise, targeted directly at him. It was the kind of gene pulse that could drop an alpha to silence, or at least force them to step back. But Keir didn't step back. He didn't soften. He didn't waver. He stepped forward. Just one slow, devastating step. The light flickered over his face and his expression was unreadable, cool, blank, almost curious. "Tell me," he said quietly. "Did you truly believe this would work?" The gene inside me faltered. My breath stuttered. I swallowed. "It works on every other alpha. I am aware," he said. "You tested it. Extensively." My cheeks warmed. So he knew. He kept moving until the distance between us dissolved. Far too close, far too intimate, far too dangerous. His presence pressed against my senses like gravity itself. The suppressor wave collided with him again and again. And broke every time. His voice dropped lower, colder. The kind of cold that traced a line down my spine. "You attempted to bend my instinct," he murmured. "But something in you does not align with something in me." A muscle in his jaw ticked. Not anger, intensity. The air thickened. Keir's alpha instincts didn't flare outward like normal. They tunneled, focused, narrowed on me with laser precision. It wasn't dominance, it was analysis. Dissection. A force that looked at me like I was both threat and answer. And God help me, something in my chest tightened under that scrutiny. My breath hitched. "Keir," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Why aren't you reacting?" "I am reacting," he said, not reassuring. His gaze swept over my face, unreadable, but heavy. "You are activating something I do not understand," he continued. "Instincts that should not exist. Patterns that should not emerge." A shiver crawled up my spine. "Stop looking at me like that." "I cannot." "Great. Wonderful. Perfect." The suppressor pulse finally crumbled entirely, leaving me feeling raw and strangely exposed. Like my skin had turned too thin. Keir leaned in the slightest bit, not touching, just close enough for his breath to brush my cheek. "You are either very dangerous," he murmured, "or very important." My heart thumped so loudly I heard it in my teeth. "I will determine which," he finished. I swallowed hard. This was no longer just code and instincts. This was something else. Something neither of us knew how to name yet. And somehow that scared me more than anything the suppressor gene ever could. Echo 9 wasn't supposed to sound alive. But as soon as Keir and I stepped back into the analysis chamber, the servers vibrated. With a low, uneasy hum, higher pitched than usual, almost like breath caught in a throat. A warning chime pulsed through the holographic panels. Then another, and another. Red lines flashed across the central projection, clustering like frantic heartbeats. Keir's brow tightened. "Echo 9 is escalating alerts." "No kidding," I muttered, as the entire wall of data lit up in violent gradients of crimson. "She's freaking out." The system issued a rapid sequence of tones, sharp, jittery, overlapping. Almost panicked. Rows of prediction graphs collapsed. Behavioral matrices flickered and scrambled. Error codes multiplied like frightened neurons firing all at once. "Backtrack the signal," Keir ordered. "I'm trying," I said, fingers flying across the interface. "But she's—" A new window snapped open on its own. Not generated by me. Not generated by Keir. Self-generated. And in glowing red script, as if handwritten into the code, appeared. "Unstable variables detected. Threat of collapse. Source, 2 entities." I froze. Keir stepped closer. "2 entities?" I swallowed. My voice felt too thin. "She means us." As if in response, the system pulsed again. One long trembling signal that reverberated through the floor. I isolated the subroutine that triggered it. My heart lurched. "Oh God," I whispered. "Keir, she's showing fear." He blinked once. "Machines do not fear." "Well, she's sure doing a convincing impression." Another ripple of red cascaded through the code, then formed into a simple, chilling sequence. "Danger. You. And. You." My fingers trembled over the holographic controls. I tried to steady them, but the cold in my chest only grew sharper. Images I didn't want bubbled up, memories I kept locked away. Me at 6 years old, clinging to my mother's hand in the middle of a dirty train station. Her whisper, "Run. Don't stop running." My father's voice fading as he shoved us forward. The explosion of instinct, the sense of being hunted. And after that, loss. Silence. The feeling of being the last piece of a broken pattern. My throat tightened painfully. I don't want to be that kid again. I don't want to lose everything again. Not because of this. Not because of me. A tremor ran through my fingers. Keir noticed. Of course he did. He always noticed. He turned toward me, face no longer a mask of cold calculation. Something softened, subtle, but unmistakable. His voice dropped to a level I hadn't heard before. "Jaren." I didn't look up. "It's fine." "It is not fine." The firmness in his tone made me lift my head. He stepped closer, not looming, not cold this time, but steady. His presence didn't narrow like a threat. It expanded, grounding the air between us. "You are shaking," he said quietly. "I'm not." "You are." I pressed my lips together, exhaling through my nose. "I just don't like what she's implying." "And what do you believe she is implying?" "That." I hesitated. "That the system sees us as unstable, as a threat, to each other, to her, to everything." Another pulse, another tremble in the code. Red script formed again. Risk rising. A spike of panic clawed up my spine. Keir's voice softened even further. A rare, unexpected warmth threading through the syllables. "Jaren. Look at me." I did. His eyes were still analytical, still sharp, but gentler than I'd ever seen them, as if he understood something I couldn't put into words. "You are not alone," he said. The tremor in my hands dissipated, just a little. "And whatever this system believes," he continued, "it does not define us." "Easy for you to say," I muttered weakly. "You're not the walking glitch. You think too little of yourself." A pause. "And too much of the machine." Despite everything, a small, breathless laugh escaped me. Keir angled closer, lowering his voice until it was almost a whisper. "We are not enemies," he said. The words landed with a surprising weight, quiet, sincere, steady as a hand on a shaking shoulder. "Not now," he added. Something loosened in my chest. Just a fraction, but enough. I nodded slowly. "Okay." For the first time the room didn't feel like a data tomb. It felt survivable. Even with both of us being variables, the machine couldn't predict. Even with the danger pulsing through its code. Because maybe, for the first time, I wasn't facing it alone. The private elevator to Keir's personal floor hummed softly as it ascended. Too smoothly, too quietly. A perfect metaphor for the man standing inside it, watching the numbers rise with unreadable calm. I tried not to fidget. Failed miserably. "Why are we going to your floor?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Planning to interrogate me somewhere soundproof?" "No." "Planning to show me your trophy room?" "No." "Planning to demonstrate that you are secure," he interrupted, tone clipped. "And that whatever instability Echo 9 identified will not escalate." "I feel very reassured," I muttered. The doors slid open. And I froze. Because Keir Voss's private level did not look like a CEO's luxury suite. It looked human. Warm lighting poured from ceiling alcoves, gold-toned and soft. A small library stretched across one wall, actual printed books, not digital replicas. Shelves arranged with quiet care, not corporate algorithms. To the right, a minimalist kitchen, clean but lived in. Farther back, a compact lab space, humming with delicate instruments. It wasn't cold. It wasn't sterile. It wasn't even intimidating. It was cozy. "Wow," I said, stepping out of the elevator. "This is not what I expected." "What did you expect?" he asked, following me in. "A soundproofed bunker where you recharge your batteries in nutrient gel." "Ridiculous," he said. Then, after a pause, "Gel is inefficient." I snorted before I could stop myself. He walked toward the kitchen area. Opening a cabinet like this was a perfectly normal situation. "You drink coffee at night," he said. "Correct? Do you monitor my caffeine intake?" "Yes." "Don't answer that so confidently." He ignored the outburst and began preparing 2 cups with movements surprisingly gentle for someone who usually handled the world like a list of variables. I watched him, the way he poured water, the way he paused to measure. Exactly, the way his shoulders relaxed just a fraction in this space. He looked less armored here, and that was dangerous knowledge. When he handed me a mug, our fingers brushed. Heat shot up my arm. I stepped back too quickly, nearly tripping over a chair in the process. Smooth, very smooth. He pretended not to notice. We sat across from each other at a small table, far too intimate for comfort. But I didn't move. Neither did he. After a moment, Keir finally spoke. "You believe I am attempting to control you?" It wasn't a question. I stared into my coffee. "Believe? No. No? Yes." Silence. Then, "I am not attempting to control you." I shot him a look. "Are you sure? Because you have a very control-heavy vibe." "I am attempting to maintain equilibrium," he said quietly. "Circumstances have become unpredictable." I blinked. Had he just admitted that out loud? That something unnerved him? "That sounds," I said slowly, "almost like you're scared of losing control." He didn't flinch, didn't deny it. "It is not fear," he said. "It is the recognition that my usual methods are insufficient." "Against me?" "Yes." For a heartbeat my chest went still. There it was. The soft spot. The crack in the marble. "You know," I said lightly, because humor was safer than honesty, "most people would find that flattering. Do you?" "Okay." That backfired. "I haven't decided," I muttered, taking a quick sip. His gaze lingered on me. Longer than usual, softer than before. It felt like a touch tracing down my spine. I shifted in my seat, trying for casual and missing by several miles. "This is weird," I said. "You being like this. Normal. Human." "I am not attempting to be human," he said. "But I am attempting to communicate." "With me?" "Yes." Another direct hit to my ability to breathe normally. And then something even stranger happened. He smiled. Not wide. Not bright. Barely there. A subtle curve of the lips, a shift in the eyes. But it was real. And it did something to my insides I didn't want to think too hard about. "Jaren," he said, voice gentler than the warm light around us, despite our conflict. "I do not wish to oppose you." My heartbeat faltered. I set my mug down carefully, afraid it would shake. "I don't want that either," I admitted. "I mean, don't get me wrong, you annoy me on a molecular level. But I don't want to be on opposite sides." Something eased in his expression. Something I had never seen there before. Relief. Not much. Barely a flicker. But enough. "Good," he said simply. For the first time the space between us didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt almost dangerously like common ground. I spent most of the next morning buried in data. Gene logs, instinct response curves, ancestral markers, encrypted medical archives that even Lunaris shouldn't technically have access to. But Keir had given me clearance with a single tap of his wrist console. So now I was knee-deep in a digital jungle of bloodline information, instinctual patterns, and genetic anomalies that made my head spin in a way both exhilarating and terrifying. Holographic models floated around me like glowing constellations. Charts twisted into spirals. Behavioral heat maps pulsed like living things. I sifted through them all, cross-comparing variant sequences, layering instinct response predictions on top of ancestral markers. I wasn't just looking at data. I was looking at myself. And at him. "Your focus is unusually intense today," Keir said, stepping up beside me. "I'm analyzing our genes," I said. "Try not to sound so casual about it." "It is casual," he replied. "It is not casual," I shot back. "You're literally a walking genetic mystery. And apparently so am I." He ignored my dramatics, which was rude but fair, and leaned closer to the models, his eyes narrowing slightly as he absorbed the information flickering across the air. "This strand," he said, pointing to a looping helix marked in red, "belongs to you." "Yeah," I said with a sigh. "My suppressor gene. The Hale line signature. And this," he pointed to a bleak blue sequence, "belongs to me." I winced. "Oh, you're not going to like this. I rarely like anything," he said calmly. "Proceed." I rubbed my palms against my jeans, exhaled, and pulled up the combined visualization, the layered projection where both our genetic signatures were overlaid. The hologram reacted immediately. 2 sequences glowed. Mine, sharp red arcs. His, icy blue lines. And they didn't contradict each other. They didn't repel each other. They locked together, like 2 puzzle pieces long separated, now clicking into place with a disturbingly natural precision. Keir stared at the projection, jaw tightening. "Explain." "Okay," I began, bracing myself. "You know how my family came from a spy lineage, right? The Hale line?" He nodded once. "Well, our suppressor gene wasn't just about calming alphas. It evolved during the old corporate wars to disable a specific type of strategic alpha. Ones. Who had hyper-focused cognition, extreme instinct control, and emotional partitioning." Keir's eyes flicked to me. "Partitioning? Compartmentalization. You have it." "Like, aggressively?" He didn't deny it. "Anyway," I continued, pulling up archived notes, "this gene was supposed to counteract that rare alpha mutation. But, after my parents' generation, the alpha mutation basically died out. Extinct. Gone. No one's seen it in decades." Keir's voice was quiet. "My strain?" "Yeah," I whispered. "Yours?" The room felt too still, too small, too charged. I swallowed. "My gene activates only when it senses that ancient mutation. It's dormant otherwise. That's why it works on every other alpha, because they're not the right type, but you." He stared at the projection, expression fracturing in a way I'd never seen. "I always assumed I was simply efficient," he said. "And you are," I said softly. "But genetically, you're built different." His breathing shifted, a small break in his normally perfect rhythm. "You're one of the last carriers," I added. "Maybe the last one at Lunaris. Maybe the last one anywhere." Silence settled like dust. Then Keir spoke, voice low, almost hollow. "So your gene was designed to control me?" "No," I corrected gently. "It was designed to counter your mutation. But it isn't working, because your version is mutated again. You evolved past the countermeasure." He absorbed that with a stillness that felt unnatural even for him. It was the first time I'd ever seen his logic actually hesitate. Finally he turned toward me, something raw and unnamed flickering behind his usually impenetrable gaze. "You," he said quietly, "are the only person I cannot manage." I let out a shaky laugh. "And you're the only person I can't shut down." His brows drew together. "A stalemate?" "Exactly," I said. "Genetically enforced stubbornness." Something shifted in the air. Not tension, not hostility. Recognition. Like 2 pieces in a pattern neither of us had chosen. Finally aligning. "We were never meant to negate each other," I murmured. "We were meant to intersect. It's like..." I gestured helplessly at the model. "Like our genes saw each other and went, yep, that one." Keir looked at the projection once more, the glow painting faint shadows across his face. "This," he said slowly, "is not coincidence." "No," I whispered. "Not even close." When our eyes met again, the realization settled between us like gravity. Whatever was happening, between our genes, our instincts, our futures, it wasn't random. It was inevitable. The Echo 9 chamber wasn't supposed to sound like a warning siren, but tonight it did. Alarms didn't blare, they vibrated. Low, pulsing. Like the room itself was shivering. Red spirals raced across the holographic displays. Core access codes flickered erratically. Keir and I entered at the same time, both already moving fast. "What caused this?" he demanded, scanning the projections. "Someone's trying to get into the updated core," I said, fingers flying across the interface. "And they're good. Very good." Keir's jaw tightened. "Internal or external?" I ran a trace. The signature bounced through internal nodes, looping itself through 6 local proxies. My pulse jumped. "It's internal." Keir stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "Who? I don't know yet. But they're not just poking around. They're going for Echo 9's behavioral library. They're trying to rewrite something." "Why that section?" "Because that's where we are." I swallowed. "Where our profiles are, where the anomalies are." He didn't flinch, but the tension in his shoulders sharpened. "Can you block the intrusion?" "I can do better," I said, pulling a secondary screen into view. "I can trap them." He shot me a brief sideways look. Not quite approval, but close. Proceed. We dove in together, two very different processors feeding into the same problem. Keir moved with cold efficiency, isolating pathways with quick, exact strokes. I worked like a spark, pivoting, improvising, slamming code down where intuition told me to. Our motions intersected, mirrored, reinforced. Where his logic drew steel, my instinct filled in the gaps. Where my chaos opened new pathways, his precision locked them. It shouldn't have worked. But it did. Beautifully. You missed a loop, he said, pointing at a flickering anomaly. Nope, I grinned. I was waiting for it to reveal its secondary recursion. He paused. You anticipated it. Please, I said. I practically flirt with recursion. That is not how recursion functions. It likes me better than you. He gave me a look that could have frozen a server room. But there was a flicker, just a flicker, of amusement in his eyes. Another spike hit the system. The intruder tried to reroute around our block. Bold, I muttered. Stupid, but bold. Keir positioned himself beside me, our shoulders nearly touching. Counter their pivot, he ordered. Already on it. I redirected the attack into a containment grid. If they try to break out, Echo 9 will auto-freeze them. They will not expect a 2-vector defense, Keir added. Because no one expects the Keir and Jaren combo, I said. That is not its name. It is now. He exhaled sharply. Half a sigh, half the quietest laugh known to the human species. We worked in sync, movements almost choreographed. He blocked. I misdirected. He cut off access. I built a fallback trap. Our hands moved through holograms side by side, almost touching. Our breaths rose and fell at the same rhythm. And when the intruder made one final push, Keir and I reacted instantly. He dropped a hard barrier. I sealed the last gap. The attack rebounded, slammed into the containment grid, and locked. Intrusion neutralized. Source trapped. Core stable. Silence filled the chamber. Slowly, the red alarms faded back to steady blue. I leaned back, breath catching in my chest. We did it. Keir didn't move at first, then he nodded. Slow, deliberate, acknowledging something deeper than a solved problem. Yes, he said quietly. We did. The air between us shifted, charged not with tension this time, but with something warmer. A recognition. A mutual understanding. Working with him had felt right. Terrifyingly right. Like we were designed for the same battlefield and had finally found each other on it. I looked up at him. He was closer than before. Close enough that the faint scent of his cologne brushed my senses. Something clean, cool, impossible to categorize. We make a good team, I said softly. He didn't deny it. He didn't step away. He held my gaze, searching, assessing, but not with fear. With certainty. For the first time, he said, voice low, you and I are aligned. A warmth spread through my chest. Unexpected. Powerful. I swallowed. Feels different. Yes, he murmured. It does. We stood there, in the quiet hum of servers and cooling air, no longer adversaries fighting opposite forces of logic and chaos. Just two people. Two anomalies. Finally on the same side. For the first time, we won as a team. Keir's office looked different at night. Quieter. Softer. Almost gentle. The city beyond the panoramic windows shimmered in dark blues and neon golds. Reflections sliding across the glass floor like moving constellations. The automated shades were half open, letting the night spill in. Echo 9's display pulsed calmly beside us. No alarms, no red warnings, no frantic cascades of errors. Just steady light. For the first time in days, the room felt still. Keir stood with his back to me, hands behind him as he looked out over the city. His silhouette was a sharp line against the glow, controlled, composed, impossibly steady. And yet, something about him felt less rigid, like the edges had softened. After a moment he spoke. What are you planning to do now? The simplicity of the question hit harder than it should have. Not an order. Not a demand. A genuine question. I leaned against the holographic desk, letting the cool glow brush over my palms. Well, that depends. He turned his head slightly. On what? On whether you keep pretending you don't need me, I said with a smirk. Professionally speaking, of course. One brow rose. Professionally? Mostly. Silence. Then, shockingly, his lips twitched. A micro smile. I crossed my arms. But if you're asking about immediate plans? First, I lifted a finger. A raise. A raise, he repeated. Yes. You broke into my system. And then I fixed it. You insulted HR. They deserved it. You operated without authorization. Semantic details, I waved off. His eyes narrowed, but not in anger. More like intrigue. Like he was picking apart my logic and enjoying the process. And after this raise? He asked. Dinner. He blinked. Dinner. Yep. With whom? I gave him a pointed look. He held my gaze for 3 long seconds before saying, In that order? I can rearrange. I shrugged. Depends on you. The room warmed around the edges. Not literally. Keir wouldn't allow inefficient heating patterns in his office, but something in the atmosphere shifted. Something light. Something dangerous in a good way. He stepped closer, not looming, not dominating, just closing the distance with deliberate softness. Jaren. His gaze anchored mine, steady, measured, but with something like curiosity beneath the surface. You are unlike anyone I have ever worked with. I'll take that as a compliment. It was not meant as one. It still is. A sigh, quiet, almost amused. I glanced at Echo 9's peaceful glow. She's calm now, stable. Whatever tried to break her, we stopped it. We did, he agreed softly. And we make a good team. He hesitated, not because he doubted it, but because he wasn't used to saying something he couldn't measure. Finally, yes, we do. A warmth settled in my chest, unexpected and annoyingly pleasant. I pushed myself upright, brushing close enough to graze the fabric of his sleeve. So, about that raise. We will discuss compensation adjustments, he said, tone even. I grinned. Translation, yes. No, you're terrible at lying. I do not lie. Exactly. Our eyes met. And held. Something unspoken moved between us. Something that had been building from the moment I sat in his chair and triggered the lockdown. Something inevitable. I reached toward the hologram to close the last open diagnostic window, and my fingers brushed his knuckles. Just barely. A whisper of contact. But the air shifted instantly. He didn't pull away, neither did I. His hand stayed on the edge of the projection, mine brushing the back of it again. A feather-light trace, lingering just long enough to acknowledge it was intentional. Warm, steady, soft in a way that contradicted everything he showed the world. My voice came out quieter than I expected. So, dinner? He didn't look away. Dinner, he confirmed. Not a question. A decision. The city lights flickered across his eyes like data streams. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Not the system. Not the gene. Not the unpredictability between us. Some hacks aren't meant to break. Some are meant to open something new. Keir's hand shifted half an inch closer. Mine met it. Barely touching, but enough for a spark to pass quietly between us. A beginning. 3 weeks later, my name appeared on the internal announcement board in bold silver letters. Jaren Hale, Director of Adaptive Systems. Not assistant. Not consultant. Not that Omega who keeps breaking into things. Director. My own department. My own team. My own keycard with more access than HR was comfortable with. Keir didn't give a speech when he approved the promotion. He simply handed me the authorization tablet and said, Protocol Trust Level A is now active. You have full executive clearance. Translation, I trust you. Officially. Permanently. Entirely. It was the closest he'd ever come to saying something sentimental, so naturally, I saved a screenshot. But the real celebration happened that evening on his private floor. The CEO kitchen was dimly lit, warm under soft amber lights. A playlist I didn't recognize hummed low in the background. Something instrumental, steady, grounding. Keir stood at the stove, sleeves rolled up, cooking with unsettling precision. You know, I said, leaning against the counter, I didn't expect you to be good at this. I am proficient in many things, he replied without turning. That sounds like a threat. It is not. Still sounds like one. He set a plate in front of me, perfectly arranged, annoyingly elegant, and took the seat across from mine. We ate. We talked. Not about Echo 9. Not about genes. Not about danger or anomalies. About small things. Good things. At one point I caught him watching me over the rim of his glass, softly, quietly, like he was observing something rare. What? I asked, feeling my ears warm. Nothing, he said. Then, after a heartbeat, you are unexpectedly stabilizing. I choked on air. That is the least romantic compliment I have ever heard. I was not attempting romance. I know. I grinned. That's why it's working. His lips curved. Just barely. And in the warm, quiet glow of that private kitchen, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Some systems don't just reboot. They evolve. Together.